The implementation of data quality is, I would say, three parts. So, people, process, and technology.
Now, going back to revisiting the main agenda, that data quality has become pivotal to the success of any AI or analytics projects within an enterprise environment. And that is the premise we are taking for today's discussion.
You can even have checks at the pipeline stage when data is moving across one system to another. You have observability checks, you have sampling checks, which are data trust kind of checks.
So, is there any early triggers that you realize that the implementation is not going as per what we thought of?
Wherever there is business ownership of data and it is accepted, then typically there is a higher chance of successful implementation of the data quality program.
Hi everyone, welcome back to AI Connect, our business podcast where we focus on AI and data. In the last episode, we talked about data quality and we focused on foundation and business impact. Now, going back to revisiting the main agenda, that data quality has become pivotal to the success of any AI or analytics projects within an enterprise environment. And that is the premise we are taking for today's discussion. In the second episode of the three-part data quality series, we are going to focus more on strategy to implementation. And to talk about more on this, I have Shiva with me.
Hey, Jaideep.
Hi Shiva, welcome.
Thank you.
Let's deep dive and unpack this, right? What does really a good data quality management system looks like, right? Can you help our viewer to understand what does it look like and in a systematic way so that we all learn about it, right?
Yeah, sure. So, data quality is actually a sub discipline of data governance, right? So, data governance includes aspects around policies, processes, standards on how you manage data across the enterprise, and data management actually implements those. And data quality is a key part of the process where we look at what is the sort of quality of data that is coming in and that is stored in the systems and that is used for business decision making on an ongoing basis. The implementation of data quality is, I would say, three parts. So, people, process, and technology, if you were to look at it, right? So, there are tools which will measure quality of data on an ongoing basis, help you with cleaning data. But then the what binds together is the process that you put together, right? From a business ownership of data, we identify data stewards who will be responsible for day-to-day operations around managing that data from a quality perspective, and the process is woven around that. So we have profiling and assessment, which is more like a measurement of the quality of data at whatever points. So there you could measure the data quality at the source system level. You could measure it before it enters the analytical warehouse or lakehouse, right? So there could be multiple options basis the business needs. So profiling and assessment is essentially assessing the quality of data, and then cleansing and transformation, and then also includes enrichment. For example, sometimes you might want to enrich data through external data sources, get some reference data in. One example is an address. Sort of, you might not have the complete address of a customer in your database. You may have some partial address. You may want to bring in some external data to complete that address field, right? You may want to bring in some reference data, for example, currency rates, which are dynamic and changing, exchange rates. So that's a reference data that you might want to bring in to make sure that your sales forecast is accurate across various sort of currencies for a global company. So enrichment, cleansing, transformation, these are part of the second sort of aspect where you are looking at making sure that the data is accurate and correct in your database. then monitoring, continuous monitoring, and then there is the process of issue management and resolution, wherein a lot of onus is there on the data stewards to look at data quality issues and resolve them, and then bring it back to. So maybe during the issue management and resolution process, you may have found certain rules were not implemented. So bring it back to the profiling and assessment process. So it's a continuous life cycle, typically implemented through a mixture of tools and processes, and there are several data quality tools which support this kind of lifecycle process.
Great. So clearly, from what you said, data travels through different kind of systems, right?
Correct.
Multiple systems, and across this journey, the checks needs to be done.
Yeah.
So how does one go about putting that kind of checking system across the journey?
Yeah, modern data quality tools allow you to measure the quality of data, assess it at multiple stages. You can look at the ingestion stage when data is coming in. For example, if somebody is manually entering the data, you can have a check there, which is like a API call to a validated data source, an authoritative data source, where, let's say, for example, you're logging a particular opportunity against a customer, but then the customer is chosen from your customer master rather than entering a customer, right? So those are checks that you can have at the ingestion stage. You can even have checks at the pipeline stage when data is moving across one system to another. You have observability checks, you have sampling checks, which are data trust kind of checks. You can have more checks around monitoring, measuring the entire data that is coming in. So you can have checks at the staging stage. Typically, before data enters the warehouse, there is a staging phase where before you do a transformation. Before the transformation, you can do checks. Basis the kind of data that you are checking, the business need, why it is being checked. So you may want to implement a more granular or a more stringent check as you get into sort of more granular level of data as well, right? We can do these checks across multiple stages of the data lifecycle.
Got it. For data, as we know, there are multiple stakeholders,
Yeah,
and multiple roles which are involved typically in any data specific project, whether it is an AI project or analytics project. And it is important that people come together and collaborate.
yes,
Right? So therefore, even the organizational structure needs to support this kind of project. Right?
correct, correct.
How do you suggest that typically an enterprise go about doing that, facilitate that, so
Yeah.
that ultimately the data quality project that they're trying to implement
Yeah.
gets the best result?
Correct, correct. So this is typically at the data governance level. So where you're setting up the organization structure that is going to support your business needs. And one of the ways that we have seen, actually, in fact, in every successful implementation of the data quality program, the onus on the ownership of the data is always on the business, because the business is responsible for the data from an ingestion point of view, from an entry point of view, and also from a usage point of view. Wherever there is business ownership of data and it is accepted, then typically there is a higher chance of successful implementation of the data quality program. It is not an IT initiative, it is not a data team initiative, but it has to be collectively owned by the business and the technology teams. The technology teams can bring in the processes and the tools that are required to support the business from a data quality perspective. But the ownership of the data has to be with the business, so that they can make sure that the data is accurate, both while the entry level as well as when they are seeing the reports or the making any decisions. They can report those issues, and then in collaboration with the technology teams, work on changing or modifying the data and ensuring that those accuracies are dealt with, right? Inaccuracies are dealt with.
Got it. So the strategy needs to be, I guess, decided at a data governance level.
Exactly.
Because as you said, this is a subset of the data quality actually is a subset of data governance
Correct.
program. Right?
Yeah.
And clearly on the data governance side, there will be some senior stakeholders who will be in, possibly even CXOs will be involved.
Exactly. So the CXOs normally sit in the enterprise data governance council, right? And where there are business owners who are responsible, and then they obviously data stewards get delegated that at an operational level for each business unit, right?
After the strategy, once the implementation takes place, we saw that, and you just explained how different groups of people can team up to as part of the implementation process. What can possibly go wrong? Can you think of any examples or one or two cases where things can go during the implementation phase?
Yes. See, at each stage of the life cycle, um, uh, if there is inappropriate level of ownership of the data or tooling or the process, things can go wrong. For example, if a lot of inaccuracies are coming in at the from the source systems itself, then it means that we are not closing the loop. So we are identifying issues, but then we are not closing the loop in making sure that at the data entry level, the issues are addressed properly. For example, if manual customer data, for example, is being entered manually, and then you have found a number of issues with that, right? The simple solution or a logical solution will be to implement a master data management system at the for the customer data, wherein which is the authoritative source of customer data, and then at the data entry level that is checked referenced against that master data. If that is not done, then there'll be continuous inflow of dirty data with respect to customers into the system, and that cannot be resolved. Or the other issue could be the tooling is imperfect. For example, in a retail scenario, you want to make timely decisions around, let's say, product promotions and all that. And if your data quality tool is very slow and it is not able to address the large volumes of data coming in, not able to analyze and then cleanse and transform very quickly, then you're not able to make those timely decisions that you want to make, right? So each element of the data quality, be it accuracy, be it timeliness, be it reference, right, to other internal data that is there. So if they are not properly working, then you will have a problem in the implementation of that.
So, is there any like early triggers that you realize that okay, the implementation is not going as per what we thought of?
Yeah, so that's one of the things that we try to do in any data quality initiative is really checking for inaccuracies at each stage of the life cycle. For example, when the data is coming in, you might want to do a very quick check around and which is usually called observability, and then accept or reject the data based on certain parameters that you said. Then we do a sampling when large volumes of data is coming in. Then we may not be able to completely analyze all of that data at the pipeline level, so we may do a sampling check for data quality at that level. So those are aspects that we can look at. But again, the most important thing is also ownership of the data. Sometimes what we have seen is the ownership of the data is missing from the business side. There is no stewardship, and that also leads to a lot of issues. While the technology might not be working in a perfect way, but then if the ownership is not there in the business, even if the technology works perfect, it will cause challenges in the implementation.
Got it. I think that's all I wanted to cover. Is there anything that you want to add other than that, what we just discussed?
No, I think we are good. So maybe in the next episode we'll talk more specifically about the tooling and what
Yeah, I
some of the
think that
solutions that we are also coming
yeah,
up with.
yeah, I think yeah, that will make a lot of actually that will make things a lot more practical.
Yeah.
So maybe what so in the first episode we have focused on foundation, and we spoke about how do we go about creating a business case, and how do we go about measuring the ROI. We discussed and touched upon some of those aspects. In the second episode, we discussed about from a strategy to implementation, what usually is the process that flows. And we also saw that what kind of problems can happen at the implementation phase, and what are those early triggers or triggers that basically tells you that your implementation is not going as per your plan. And because we have touched upon, and data quality has a direct connection to tooling and basically infra. So we'll get to that on our third episode, which is basically in this three-part series. We talk about tooling in specific. And then we will also, in that connection, talk about Data Sentinel, which is Prescience data quality solution. And probably we'll talk about how that addresses some of the data quality aspects and even the workflow.
Sure.
And where it can fit into enterprise workflow.
Sure. Yeah.
Great. So I think with that, we will then wrap up the second part of this three-part series of data quality podcast. And we'll come back to the third episode. Till then, thank you very much for watching. Siva, thank you very much for
Thank you.
sharing the insights.
Thank you, Jyoti.